the echoes between the walls. The house was waiting for him. Dorian felt it in the way the keys shivered in his hand as he stepped from the car into the mist. The front gate, an iron arch overgrown with dead ivy, creaked open before he touched it. Not with wind. The want. Fog clung low to the weeds along the path, coiling like fingers. The sky was swollen with a sickly hue, neither dawn nor dusk. And through it all the house stood, tall 3 stories of blackened wood and crooked shutters, its once white trim now a decaying gray. He hadn't seen it in 18 years. Not since the fire. And yet nothing had changed. The broken gutter still dangled from the left gable like a snapped limb. The weather vane spun lazily despite the stillness. And above the door, nailed at a slant, was the brass nameplate, Ashford House. He had not come back willingly. But desperation breeds recklessness. After the divorce, the failed teaching position and the mounting debt, the old letter had resurfaced. Hidden in the lining of his suitcase. A letter from his uncle Edward, sent only weeks before the fire that had taken him. Dorian, I fear the walls are listening again. I've sealed the door, but it's not enough. If you return, don't trust the silence. You'll know the truth by its echo. The words had haunted him in a vague way for years. Now they felt like a map. He opened the front door. It was not locked. The air inside was thicker than fog. Dust. Memory. The foyer stretched ahead, lit only by the dim light leaking through tall stained glass windows. Cobwebs adorned the chandelier. The wallpaper peeled like burned skin. But the worst thing? Smelled the same. Cinnamon. Tobacco. Charred wood. He stepped in and shut the door. And it locked behind him. The second floor was where it had started. Back then he'd thought the walls were just thin. An old house built without insulation. You heard footsteps from every room. Whispered arguments. Things clattering at night. But Edward had said otherwise. They move when you're not looking, he once told Dorian at 12. The walls. They shift. Back then it had sounded like nonsense. Now he wasn't so sure. He climbed the stairs slowly, each creak a memory. The second floor hallway stretched longer than he remembered. Longer than it should be. He opened the door to the old study. Dust blanketed everything. Desk, shelves, the record player in the corner. The old piano by the window was still out of tune, a single key broken off like a missing tooth. And on the desk, a tape recorder. He frowned. It hadn't been there before. He pressed play. Can't sleep anymore. The walls. They hum at night. They whisper names. Some aren't mine. Edward's voice. Quite a now. Fragile. And then I saw it. A door. Where no door should be. I followed the sound and it led me to the static. Then a click. Then silence. Dorian stared at the recorder. Something about that last sound. He turned his head. There at the far end of the hall where the wallpaper changed was a crack. A vertical seam he hadn't noticed before. Thin. Just wide enough to slip fingers into. A hidden door. He approached. As he neared, the silence grew louder. Like the world held its breath. He touched the seam. It swung open. Inside was a narrow stairwell descending. Into the walls. The air changed immediately. Colder. Wetter. The stairs were uneven. The wood warped with age. No railing. The walls closed in so tightly that his shoulders brushed both sides. And the sound. It wasn't silence. It was breathing. Slow. Shallow. As though the house itself had lungs. Halfway down he heard it. A whisper. His name. Dorian. He froze. But it came again. Not loud. Not angry. Almost sad. You came back. He turned, but the stairwell behind him had vanished. The light too. Darkness pressed in like a weight. He reached into his coat and fumbled for the lighter. Flicked it once, twice. The flame flared. And he saw them. Eyes. In the walls. Tiny. Glinting. Then gone. He descended faster now. At the bottom, a door. Stone. He pushed it open. It led to a room he couldn't remember ever existing. Massive. Circular. The walls made of brick, covered in ancient, faded murals. Figures kneeling before an archway. Others pressed against invisible barriers. In the center, a chair. Facing the wall. Someone sat in it. He approached slowly. The figure was slumped. And tied. The ropes were thick, frayed. Molded with age. "Hello," he said, voice hoarse. No answer. He reached out. Touched the shoulder. The body collapsed. Dust. Only dust. But carved into the chair over and over in jagged scrawl. Don't listen. Don't listen. Don't listen. Dorian stumbled back. And the wall ahead shuddered. Something rippled behind it. Not just behind, within. It wasn't brick. Not really. It was a membrane. And on it his reflection began to form. But it wasn't him. It looked like him. But older. Hollowed. Eyes empty. And then it smiled. He ran. Up the stairs. Through the hall. Out into the night. But the house did not release him. The front door had vanished. In its place, a mirror. And within it, his reflection still smiled. Not yet, it said. And from the walls. Laughter. He didn't sleep. The house didn't allow it. After the mirror spoke, Dorian had fled to the second-floor guest room, locked the door and barricaded it with a dresser. But still the whispers came. They seeped through the wallpaper like damp. They called his name not as a threat but a plea. Sometimes he heard his mother's voice. Sometimes his own. And once, late in the night, something else entirely. You've already been here before. You just don't remember. At first he thought he was dreaming. But in the morning, if it was morning, the windows remained black. He found something under the bed. A notebook. Old, water-damaged but familiar. The first few pages were blank. Then his own handwriting. Day 3. The mirrors are traps. They don't reflect, they record. Don't look too long. Don't speak in front of them. They remember. Dorian's blood ran cold. He flipped ahead. Dozens of pages filled with observations, frantic notes, paranoid sketches of spirals, mouths and doors. He read the last entry aloud. I made it to the attic. I think it knows I'm close. I can hear it myself. Not just echoes. Whole thoughts. I think I left something there. Something I forgot on purpose. The attic. He hadn't even considered going up. The staircase had been nailed shut since he was a child. Edward had forbidden it. Too many voices, he once muttered. That's where the house listens hardest. But now it seemed like the only option. The attic stairs groaned like dying wood as he pried them open. It smelled like rust and mildew. Dust choked the air thick with moths. He climbed slowly. The trapdoor above opened on its own. And what waited inside was impossible. The attic was clean. Polished wood. Framed portraits. Warm lantern light. A phonograph played soft piano music. It looked like something from another time entirely. There was a desk near the far wall. And behind it, Edward. Alive. Older. Sitting with folded hands. Dorian froze. Uncle. The man looked up. Eyes tired. Haunted. You came back, he said quietly. That's not possible. You died. I died in the fire, yes. He gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. Quickly. It won't hold long. Dorian approached cautiously and sat. Edward leaned forward. This house. It remembers us because we were born in it. Blood binds memory here. And memory is currency. I don't understand. You will. The house isn't haunted. It's sentient. A structure grown from the bones of what we forget. Every regret, every silence, every word left unsaid. It's brick and beam here. He fed it, Dorian. We both did. I didn't mean to. Meaning is irrelevant. Emotion is the mortar. And we left it too much. Dorian stood. Then help me destroy it. You can't. But you can leave. If you're willing to pay the toll. What toll? Edward pointed behind him. To the mirror. Not a flat pane this time, but a doorway. Within it Dorian saw himself. But younger. 16. Standing in the smoking ruins of the house. Clutching something in his arms. A book. The black journal. Dorian blinked. That was impossible. He never had the journal as a teen. Said he did. And then he forgot. What is this? He whispered. Your first return, Edward said softly. You came back years ago. But you weren't strong enough to leave. The younger Dorian in the mirror turned. And screamed. The mirror shattered from within. And the light in the attic flickered. Edward stood. It's waking, he said. The house doesn't like when we dig too deep. What do I do? You go down to the basement. Beneath the brick room. There's one door left unopened. What's behind it? Edward's eyes turned dark. Whatever you left behind. The mirror shards whispered as Dorian descended the attic stairs. Each piece echoed a memory. Why did you leave me here? You promised you'd come back. You were never going to save me. They weren't Edward's voice. They were his. To himself. He made it to the basement by nightfall. Though in Ashford House time no longer mattered. The walls pulsed now. The murals on the brick shimmered, figures now moving. Some trying to escape the paint. Others clawing inward. The stone door stood waiting. He pulled. It opened onto stairs that spiraled downward forever. He began to descend. The deeper he went, the louder the house became. But not with sound. With remembrance. Every misstep. Every lie. Every betrayal. They bled from the stones. He passed a room where his father drank in silence. Another where his mother cried to an empty chair. Another, where a boy sat alone on his birthday. Each moment somehow real. Tangible. This was not a house. It was a cathedral of forgetting. And he was its only priest. At the bottom, the final door. He touched the handle. And heard the voice again. You came back too soon. He opened the door. And saw himself. Tied to a chair. Mouth sewn shut. Eyes wide. The same as the figure from earlier. But this one looked at him. Tried to speak. Behind him the door slammed. And the voice whispered. You'll forget again. But each time we remember more. Dorian stared at himself. Bound to the chair. Mouth stitched shut but eyes alive. Not pleading. Not afraid. Only exhausted. He stepped closer. The room was circular like the one above, but the walls here weren't brick. They were mirrors. Dozens. Floor to ceiling. Each one showing a different version of himself. Laughing. Screaming. Hiding. Aging backward. Some clawing to get out. Some watching. But one mirror in the corner was blank. And pulsing. He turned back to the tied version of himself. The moment he touched the ropes, the mirrors began to tremble. A deep, internal quake. The stitched Dorian leaned forward, touching his forehead to his, even with his mouth sealed. And into Dorian's mind the voice poured, not as words but memory. He had been here before. Not once. But dozens of times. Each return a failed attempt to find the truth. To remember what he buried. The house didn't trap him. He trapped himself. It was built from his guilt, yes. But sustained by his refusal to face it. Edward had never survived. That version in the attic had been assembled. From Dorian's fading recollections. The house had used the shape of his uncle to deliver one final test. Would Dorian obey his fear? Or confront his truth? Now he understood. He turned to the final mirror. The blank one. It showed nothing because he had never dared look. He stepped toward it. And it lit. Scene by scene played across its surface. A child's voice crying for help. The scent of smoke. A door he had closed. And locked. Because he was afraid. Because Edward had told him to run and not look back. But someone had been left behind. Not Edward. Someone else. His brother. The boy with the freckles and the stutter. Only 7. Who had followed Dorian into the hidden stairwell that night of the fire. And who had begged him not to leave. Dorian had blocked it out. Refused to believe he'd done it. But now the house gave him no choice. Made him watch. The moment he closed the secret door. The small hand on the glass. The flame that burst behind it. And the scream. One long endless scream. He fell to his knees. And the mirror cracked. But not from violence. From release. The stitched version of himself collapsed into dust. The mirrors went dark. Above, the walls began to groan. The foundations of Ashford House trembled. And then, for the first time in 20 years, Dorian wept. Not the tears of guilt, but of acceptance. The room around him split. The house fractured. And in that moment of collapse he saw them. All the versions of himself he had left behind. Each nodded once. And vanished. As the walls caved, Dorian stepped through the broken mirror. Into light. Real light. He awoke on the grass outside the ruins of Ashford House. It had burned again. This time to the foundation. But the air smelled clean. And he felt lighter. Something small rested beside him. A rusted key. The one from his brother's toy chest. He clutched it. And for the first time in his adult life, he remembered the boy's name. Jonah. 3 weeks later, Dorian stood before the grave he had commissioned. Jonah Ellison. 1993 to 2000. You were never forgotten. Only hidden. And now always remembered. As he turned to leave, a breeze passed. It whispered. But not with threat. With peace. And behind him, where the wind stirred the leaves, stood no house. Only trees. And silence. True silence.